Hello, I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 4, Episode 5 of the Beer and Broadband podcast, and it's supposed to come out on June 21st, 2021. And today we're going to talk about two of my accidental brewer brews. One is called Bell of the Ball, and one is called Roast Me. Ricky is trying Bell of the Ball right now. They are both Capsicumel. I think I pronounced that right. Capsicumels. And they're both made from bell pepper. One is a non-roasted bell pepper called Bell of the Ball, and it is 14% ABV. The other one is a roasted bell pepper called Roast Me, and it was supposed to be a session mead. It actually went a little bit higher ABV to 8.5, so I don't think it's quite a session mead, but it has erythritol in it. It's been back sweetened. Bell of the Ball hasn't been back sweetened. So let's get right into what you think about them. I don't expect them to be wonderful.
In all honesty, I really like Bell of the Ball. It's botanical.
Yeah.
The aroma is amazing. I mean, it smells exactly like a pepper.
Bell pepper, right?
Yeah. You don't get as much of the flavor. You know, there's definitely some of that greenery in it. It's not very spicy.
Well, it's not supposed to be spicy because bell peppers aren't. That's why I chose
bell pepper. Well, I mean, really, like, it smells like it'd be spicy, but it isn't when you taste it. What I would do to make this a little bit better, even though I do like it the way it is I would throw in maybe some herbs.
So I did that.
Okay.
It's got cardamom, cinnamon, and pepper.
Okay. Yeah, but I want some, like, green herbs. Give me, like, maybe some rosemary.
Or some thyme.
Or, some thyme. Maybe dill in there would be really good. Because I'd want to use this almost like you would a botanical spirit. Where, like, you're mixing it with seltzer or something
kind of
else.
Like a tincture.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's got, like, I know it's not, wait, okay, I guess you said it's not flavored with erythritol. Is it back sweetened?
No, that's just the cinnamon. Is creating the sweetness flavor mixed with the perceived sweetness from the.
And the honey never fully ferments, so it always leaves behind a little bit of sweetness. But that's actually pretty good. I mean, I'm certainly going to finish what I have here. It's one of those flavors you don't get to have a lot. You know, there's not too many people that make really, like, botanical brews because most people get turned off on it. But I mean, this would be great mixed in something either kind of light, like, you know, like a seltzer, or you can put it in a mixed drink. Kind of like the same place that people generally put, like, mojitos. They want to get, like, a couple of things like mint in there. So maybe, like, a little bit of ice, and instead of, like, necessarily brewing with some of those, like, herbs, you actually just, like, put a couple stalks of those herbs in there. Let it just sit for a little bit. That could be really good. But I mean, I've had some Capsicumels before. I've had a lot of, like, pepper beers or pepper ciders and stuff like that. And they're generally not very good because they focus on just trying to have some heat to them. Yep. But the heat doesn't really complement anything. It's a wives' tale that alcohol makes hot food go away because while it is true, the ethanol will dissolve the molecules of the capsaicin. Alcohol sets off the same receptors, so you're picking your poison. You're just straightening it out,
inflaming those receptors that are already inflamed.
Yeah, you're getting rid of one chemical to just put another one in its place. But this has that mild sweetness, that greenness to it. It's not just, hey, I've got some heat. You actually have some real, like, pepper flavor in there.
So with this one, I tried to really pick up the pepper flavor, but I was trying to get some of that vegetal ness out of the greenness to go away. And so with this one, I got rid of the seeds because I was hoping that would get rid of some of that vegetalness. But I think what I learned is keeping the seeds in a bell pepper is actually not bad because it gives you some of those oils and adds some of that flavor. But what you really need to do is go a different direction to tone down some of that vegetalness. And I think also I chose a wildflower honey. And maybe I should have chosen a buckwheat honey or something like that. I mean, the same thing with my coffee melts, like a honey that is more meaty, I guess is the best way to say it. It's less focused on the sweetness and more focused on, like, the earthiness of what it gets from the
maybe. Yeah.
the flowers.
So most sugars have the same, and it's really, I'll maybe have a little rant about that. They all have around the same sweetness content.
Yeah.
Now viscosity varies greatly, which is one of the things that's hard about using honey, especially when you try and use like calculators online, because they try and aim for the middle. But I've gotten like particularly watery honey or particular thick honey, and that like changes all these ratios you got to be aware of. But I actually think I probably like the wildflower in this, because I think that's distracting from some of that straight like vegetalness to it. Like, it's not just, hey, there's some pepper in here, but there's like some floral notes to this that you get out of wildflower honey that I think go really well with it.
Okay, well, so what I'm thinking about doing next is trying to make a coffee mel with some buckwheat honey. I was thinking about doing the roasted bell pepper, which we haven't tried yet, in the same way, but doing it with some buckwheat, because I think that the roasted bell pepper is an evolution of this right here.
But maybe I should go ahead and I'll try the roasted one.
Yeah, you totally should. Now, what I was going for this one, which didn't end up happening, was to have a lower ABV, but get some of the pepper flavors, get the less vegetalness, but more of like the actual, because it's the same thing. It's a green bell pepper, and get more of like the pepper, like what you get like if you had like a bell pepper, stuffed bell pepper, because that's the flavor I was going to.
Yeah.
So get a little bit of spice, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of peppercorn in there, but not be spicy in the sense of heat.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they're two very different drinks. You're right. The roasted one really does take a step back from like the flavor of the pepper, like the flesh of the pepper.
You're right.
But it does still hit some decent, like the heating notes.
Yeah.
And you do still taste all those spices in it. It's got a really great smell. Like, I mean, you can just smell the smoke on it. And it's got a little bit of that flavor in there. The sweetness is a little much for me. And I think that's because I'm particularly sensitive to most artificial sweeteners. But
well, it's not an artificial sweetener. There's no artificial.
Well, okay, I should say sugar substitutes.
Yeah.
Like things, all the sugar substitutes I always find a little bit too sweet. But that's just a personal preference. But in all honesty, I think your idea of get a meatier honey for the smoked one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because you don't have as much of that vegetal flavor to pull back on and say, look, I want some herbs in here. But something with a really nice, like, earthy body to that kind of gets you more into that rugged, I'm out at a campfire sort of ambiance. I could really see working well with that.
And they're both lightly carbonated. So the roast me is one that I put in the fridge to let it set. It doesn't have as much tannin or legs to it as the Bell of the Ball does.
Yeah. Of course, the Bell of the Ball is also several ABV higher. It's hard to get legs on something that's less than 8%.
Well, but also I didn't put the same ingredients in it, so there wouldn't be the availability of the legs and tannin in roast me as there is.
Yeah, not the tannins, but the legs is purely ethanol, isn't it?
It's not all. It's oils. So that I don't have there's not as many things to give the oils to.
Yeah, I guess. There are some oils to it, but yeah, it's mostly ethanol.
Like cinnamon sticks or anything like that, and you draw the oil out of the cinnamon and into the brew. So I'm loving the caps. So I thought I would like kind of hate the Capsicumel journey more because I've never really had a brew that was a Capsicumel that I loved. But I'm finding that more enjoyable and more exploratory than the coffee mel journey.
Yeah. I think you're taking the right approach to it because like the real issue most people take with it, including some of those people that you sent me that you were basing your recipes off of, is they're choosing things like chilies and hotter peppers.
Yep.
And those don't create as good an environment for the yeast to grow in. So they're getting off flavors. They're getting heat from the chemical process and not necessarily heat from the pepper itself. That has led to a lot of them saying, oh, this isn't bad, but it's not what I was expecting. But, getting down to earth and saying, look, I'm not trying to make this like a habanero mead and just make it really spicy. And I just want to, exactly as you said, I want to embrace the pepper as it is when I eat it.
Right.
When it's like a stuffed pepper or it's part of a dish. I think is the better direction, because those juices are not high in sugar. So, just like the juice from an apple is what gives it most of its apple flavor, the juice from the green pepper is what gives the green pepper most of its flavor. And that stuff is not going to ferment out as much.
Nope.
So if you have it in there, you're going to get more of those flavors. Because the yeast will be able to process. You don't have to go as far as like, I'm going to throw it full of jalapenos and make that really spicy brew that maybe once it gets to a decent ABV, that's just too hostile an environment for the yeast to keep going. And, as we've talked about a lot, if you stress your yeast, you're going to get off flavors. So, make that nice, homey environment like you have. And I think they've worked out both really well.
I love the smell of the roasted.
Oh, yeah. It's a great aroma.
They both have great smells. Mm-hmm. I cannot describe through a podcast how interesting this is. This is one of those things. I've had a couple of both. This is the first time I've drank the roast meat, but I've had a couple of the Belle of the Ball, and I made a Serrano and I made a jalapeno, and I did the same sort of thing. I wasn't going for spicy. I was going for the flavor of the pepper, and I have been very interested in just exploring those flavors that come out. I want to do that again, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up making a mixed blend that is I make a couple of different ones, and then I start mixing the wines together.
Yep.
And then once I get them to the ratio I like, I might make a 3-gallon batch of one, a 2-gallon batch of the other, and a gallon batch of the final, and then kind of mix them all together and get a mixed Capsicumel. So that's kind of the direction that's going.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Ubiquity breach. So you did some research on this.
Tell
me what you think about it.
I'm a little sad about it, because I'll admit it didn't get enough headline, I guess, when it really happened to distract me from the other stuff that was happening that part of the year. So I hadn't really heard about it until I looked it up. And it really, it screams to me some of the worst parts of big tech. Mm-hmm. So they had a security breach. I don't think anyone can fault them for that bit. If you extrapolate how it happened, where they were vulnerable, I think we live in a world that cyber attacks are so common that you can't look at someone and say, oh, you had a security breach, you're a bad company.
Yeah, you just become numb to it at some point.
Yeah, well, at some point, when we're moving to this cloud stuff, and we talked about this a couple of years ago, as you're moving more stuff in the cloud, it's becoming more vulnerable. These things are going to happen. But to find out that, at least claimed, Ubiquiti has not denied any of the stuff, but they haven't. That's also kind of a little bit telling that a big company hasn't come out and denied any of the things that happened.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that can happen, though, too. And it may not be that they're hiding anything. I mean, I'm not being the devil's advocate.
Yeah,
in this.
no, I get what you mean. Not all claims are accurate,
and sometimes it's not worth the hassle to go out and fight those things, because it's not causing you any problems.
Yeah. Well, certain things I think that got said would be very easy for them to prove weren't true.
Right.
That they haven't, which is a little bit telling to me. But from my research, the proposed story of what happened is it was one of their admins who got hacked initially. Mm-hmm. Their LastPass contained basically all of their admin passwords that were used in their AWS system. And so essentially everything in the AWS system was compromised. Anything you were running through Ubiquiti that went through AWS was potentially monitored, accessed. All those passwords could have been leaked.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much that they got hacked, because LastPass, as far as I know, even though I'm trying to move away from it, has never had an actual breach of its system. They leaked their master password.
Yeah. It's not like someone hacked into LastPass to get to them. They got access to the admin's local machine and got through it that way.
Right.
And that was really scary. On one level, there's claims that, they downplayed the breach to save stock value. And who knows if that's true, but you can believe it to a certain extent. That is one of the issues with big tech, is there's a lot of connection to the shareholders and less to the customers. The bigger thing that worried me is that actually worked potentially. If we're saying that that's how the hack happened, that they got into somebody's LastPass And from there, they were able to get into everything. Just really screams bad digital security to me. Why is Ubiquiti not enforcing a good multi-factor authentication sort of setup? Or why aren't they, requiring hard tokens or something that can't be hacked as easily? The idea that somebody's password leaks and now your entire, million device environment is compromised is a really scary thought for a big tech company to have.
It is, and there's something wonky there. I'm not sure that the story holds up because they have the ability for you to use multi-factor authentication with their stuff, and the things that were supposedly hacked, like in the way that they were said to be hacked, also were supposed to use multi-factor authentication. But let's suppose, because I don't know the true story, so I'm not.
That's true. It's all down to just what is being reported in the news.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there could be some people that are out there like, I know more about this. So what does that say to you about using the products?
I would have to do more research than I've done to see how much that holds water. If it really does look like that's what happened, that a master password got leaked and then all this back-end access was available, I would be a little bit concerned, because the lack of security protocol there almost reads like a bad, buddy cop sort of thing. It's hear me out here. How often have you heard this? You're watching a movie or like a CSI or something like that. They go to the hacker on the dark web to help them out. They slap a couple things on their keyboard and they say, "I'm in. I've got access to every router they've ever shipped all over the world." It just sounds like mustache twisty. I mean, if that's what happened, if that's maybe what I want to see from Ubiquiti.
I know some facts that they couldn't have access to every router that they've ever shipped all over the world because, number one, the only way that they would be able to get someone else's account information is being able to go in if they don't have multi-factor authentication set up for accessing their system, and if they didn't change their password.
Yeah, but that's also implying that Ubiquiti doesn't have backends to their devices.
But they don't. You have to have the cloud key to be able to do that. I mean, that's known.
Well, I'd probably challenge that, in a sense of they may say that. But there was, if you remember, a real big stink, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that it came out that both Microsoft and Apple had backdoors purposely in the OS that customers and events couldn't access, that they put there for things like their own admins and law enforcement.
I absolutely understand that and know that that's true, but as far as I know, from what I understand, and doing my own research into this and trying to access, the Ubiquiti systems are basically based off of Linux, and so any backdoor that would exist in a Linux system would exist. As far as I know, there aren't any in that system.
But do they use open source? You can get access to it Linux, or do they have their own version of it?
No, it's just open source. You can get access. You can actually get to the command line on these routers.
And but that also, that doesn't mean it's open source.
I'm saying you can audit the OS and stuff like that. The big problem is that the cloud key uses your UI account if you're using a cloud key, and that has to be stored on their system, and you can get remote access from the cloud key. So with this breach, if you didn't change your password, or you didn't enable multi-factor authentication, you didn't already have that set up, then if you're using one of their cloud keys, like the Dream Machine has or something like that, then that can allow people to have a backdoor outside of the system. Where if you were hosting your own version of the controller software on some equipment that you have, then it's not tied to your cloud key account or your UI account.
Yeah, that was kind of also my understanding of it, is that it was only their cloud enabled services that were hacked. Which frankly for me, I don't know. And this kind of goes back to a conversation we had a long time ago about networking going into the cloud. And that is the thing I'm most concerned about, is anything you put up in the cloud is innately less secure than something you run local. Now, granted, the number one security threat is generally the own admins. You fire somebody and they release a password. It's human stuff at the base level that's always the biggest threat.
Yep.
So I get that part doesn't change. But making all of your stuff internet accessible, you don't only have just like a single entryway through like your DMZ or something like that, innately puts it at larger risk.
But that is the way that we're going as
it is
as a society, as a technological group of people that do these sort of things. That's the way we're going. Places, things like Zscaler and stuff like that already exist that basically do that. And people want that because they want the convenience and the ease over the security.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there are some obvious positives to cloud computing and cloud networking. People just don't talk enough about the negatives. But I guess to your point, you said, would that change my opinion on using the product? I don't think at this point, knowing what I know, it would. But it would make me a bit more cautious and like pay attention a little bit more. Because I missed this the first time. And this was not a hard thing for me to research once I knew it was there.
Yep.
So I think that for me, I'll just be paying a little bit more attention to Ubiquiti headlines for like a little while.
So, and you don't really use Ubiquiti stuff in your home, but I do.
Yeah.
But my network is set up with it. It's a fact that I've put out on this podcast multiple times. I changed my password and I did all this other stuff, and I've got some things that secure my account to make it less vulnerable to those things, and I'm not going to say how. It's because I want to keep myself secure for the most part. But there is a convenience to being able to get into an app on my phone and see when a device is not working.
Yeah.
And being able to do that. And it is a very worthwhile convenience. And the granularity that you have with Ubiquiti's stuff rivals something like Meraki for a 10th, or maybe even an 18th of the price, depending on what you're going to. And with some new features that are higher than what you would get with like a Meraki or something like that. And I love Meraki stuff. Like, it is time and place appropriate to have there. It beats out things like Ruckus, and so there's another one, it's Honeycomb or something like that. But there are some other like small office, medium size, like prosumer kind of stuff that I think Ubiquiti just like does better. I can't say that MikroTik is worse than Ubiquiti or better. They have some advantages. I've thought about putting some MikroTik switches in my home network, but one of the problems with MikroTik is I don't have access when I'm away from home, and I need to have my network back up. And my network is one of those things that I try to keep up. I wouldn't say 99.99, but definitely 99% of the time. Yeah. My network does stay up. Like, I keep it up. So for me, it didn't stop me from using their equipment. It like you, it just makes me think I need to be a little bit more conscientious of what they're doing. But I mean, every service I've ever used has had breaches.
Yeah.
Amazon, and you say, oh no, well no, Amazon never has. AWS has breaches all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can subdivide a company to the point you say this one piece has never had a breach, but the company's had a breach.
Google's had breaches. All of them have had breaches. Apple's had like breaches and problems, and Microsoft. They've all done it, and to the effect that their breaches have not affected me as bad as things like the breaches that came from the credit monitoring companies or something like that. So I'm concerned about those things. I'm not excusing them. I'm not a fanboy. If something came along, I've invested in this home network, but if something came along that was better, I would ditch it and buy that equipment and just resell this stuff. Like I'm not blind to it. But that said, I bought a Dream Machine Pro.
Yeah.
And it has taken over my network. And now I have the beginnings of my 10 gig network in my home. I get 2 gigs to my house through Google Fiber, which is awesome. And I can't say enough about how much having that extra bandwidth is great, but I can't take full advantage of it quite yet. However, my Dream Machine is set up to be that 2.5. It's actually 2.5 gigs, but my Dream Machine is set up to be able to connect and take advantage from the Google modem. I would love to get rid of the Google modem and just have the Dream Machine directly connected, but I haven't gotten that to work yet.
Yeah.
And because my family uses the network, I can't take it down when they're here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you spoke on the Google modem? Do you actually have a modem through them, or do you just have the connector box?
It's not a modem; it's a router that connects via fiber, and so it has a fiber connection in. It's a ONT, and it uses a 10 gig connection that only receives 2.5 gigs of bandwidth.
Yeah. You've got the same sort of wall-mounted DMARC thing, right? Or
It's not wall-mounted. It's like a big space station looking
Okay,
thing.
interesting. Yeah, mine is. When they installed mine, I've got literally in the wall. The router is connected on the other side. It's like a big little base.
That's the way it used to be.
Okay.
It's not the way it is now.
Gotcha.
The new modem is do you remember the Clear Netgear? Those
yeah.
It looks like a giant version of that.
Okay.
It's like this ocular kind of round thing that looks like an egg but with a flat top and a flat bottom.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a neat little thing, and I can control it through my Fiber app, and I can do all sorts of stuff with it, but there's 3 things I can't do. 1, I don't have as granular of a firewall permission that I want to do on it, and 2, I don't have VLANs.
Okay,
and for me, it is absolutely important to have my security stuff on one VLAN and have my other stuff on another, and I don't want them to mix. And I'm even moving off some of my Assistant and stuff like that stuff. Some of my IoT devices, I want to put them on their own VLAN. Because of convenience, I've kept some of those things on the same VLAN.
Yeah.
But I eventually want to move them off to something else and get some routing set up to where it's just available one way to the other VLAN.
Yeah, because that's that area of where all these breaches happen is those IoT devices. Man, people love them.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have my IoT devices are not as it's not like an internet connected microwave.
Yeah.
I just have a couple light bulbs.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Your stuff is pretty good. And you buy good brands, you keep up with it.
Yeah.
I just still remembered that story that made the news a year or 2 ago. That was a casino got hacked and lost a lot of money because of the thermostat in the fish tank or something like that.
Yeah, but the Dream Machine Pro basically has all of its 1 gig connections on it are on the same chip. The advantage of it is that it has 2 10 gig connections, one that's a WAN and one that's a LAN connection essentially. So I can route those to a switch, and then when I buy my 10 gig switch, I'll just have 10 gig fiber out to the whole house.
Yeah.
Or I'll do Cat 6A and use fiber. I'll get a fiber switch, but I'll use a fiber to copper module.
Yeah.
But the base thing that's just so awesome about this is I have my key, my security, and if I wanted to do the talk or the access, so now UniFi does power plugs that you could use through IoT and stuff like that. So I have one of my beacons that doesn't always connect. When it gets a little bit of interference, it'll drop. I can reboot it remotely now.
Okay.
Yeah, stuff like that is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I say reboot, I mean cut the power to it via the plug that's plugged into the back of it.
Yeah, the good way to do reboot.
Yeah, not the bad way.
The secure way.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy with the Dream Machine Pro. It's pretty awesome. You got any questions about it or anything like that?
No, but probably once I'm over here, I'll look it over.
Well, I mean, it's just in that closet right there, and
That's
I showed
true,
it to
but
you the last time you were here.
Oh, okay, it's the same device. All right, I got you. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. The Google 2 gig fiber is pretty awesome too. I highly suggest it for anyone that can do multi-gig in the home.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's basically what I'm building right now, is a multi-gig network in my home. I cannot wait to have 2 gig or 2.5 gig connectivity or 10 gig connectivity to my Plex server. That is going to be so awesome.
Yeah.
To be able to stream. I mean, it's already pretty fast with 1 gig, but to be able to move large files around and stuff like that, it's going to be amazing. You got anything else to say about that?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, this has been Season 4, Episode 5 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We have social media links down below. I'll include some links to things like the Dream Machine Pro and stuff like that, but you guys probably should consider building out your network properly before you buy something like that. I'd already designed mine. Being an architect, I kind of understand what I'm getting into. It's a home network, but there is some complexity to it. So, not encouraging anyone to buy a Dream Machine Pro. And always, we're not affiliated with anything. We are starting back up our Patreon so that you guys can, contribute to the growth of the podcast if you'd like to. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening. Have a nice day.